Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a hearing conducted by the Resource Planning Committee of the Door County Board of Supervisors. By the way, can you all hear us? No. Are these on?
Yeah, they are. I hear them.
Bring it closer, maybe? Bring them closer.
We'll fix that.
Mine's on.
Can you hear me now? Oh, holy cow.
I can
Closer
hear 'em on-
yet?
No. I hear them on the. I hear them
Yeah,
on
I can hear it
speakers.
on the speaker, but I think they gotta crank the volume on the speakers up there. But
Can you hear it now? All right, I'll make sure I speak right into it. We'll start again. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a hearing conducted by the Resource Planning Committee of the Door County Board of Supervisors. My name is Ken Fisher. I'm the chair of this committee, and I represent District 10, which is in the city of Sturgeon Bay. I'll have the other committee members introduce themselves.
Yes, I'm Richard Verley. I'm a representative of the District 15 of the town of Sevastopol, which is basically from Highway 42 going east over to Lake Michigan. This project is in Sevastopol. However, it's not in my district. It's in the western district of Sevastopol.
I'm Vinnie Shomo with District 18. I represent the village of Ephraim in the town of Gibraltar. And I just wanted to say that I am cited in the opponent's report for writing an article 16 years ago for the Peninsula Pulse on the Niagara Escarpment. So I just wanted to reassure my impartiality in this case. Thank you.
David Onagold, District 17, representing the village of Egg Harbor, portions of the town of Egg Harbor, town of Jacksonport, and town of Bailey's Harbor.
good afternoon, I'm John Cook. I represent District 4, which covers the areas of Nassawapi and the township of Gardner, everything south of County Highway C and southeast of Highway C when you get to Gardner. So
I'm Mariah Good. Wait a minute. Yep. Mariah Good. I'm director of the York County Land Use Services Department. All right, Laddie. Mariah Good. I heard that. Director of the Door County Land Use Services Department.
I'm Sue Vanden Langenberg, a zoning administrator. Will be clerking tonight.
And I'm Grant Thomas, Door County's Corporation Counsel.
Okay, thank you. The purpose of this hearing is to gather testimony for the case on today's agenda. You are encouraged to explain how your interests are affected, how the public is affected, and to bring out any facts pertinent to the case related to public health, safety, convenience, and general welfare. There's only one case on today's agenda, that's conditional use. The Resource Planning Committee will hold this conditional use permit hearing, and then we will make our decision at a regular open business meeting in the near future. These decisions are normally final, but may be appealed to the Door County Board of Adjustment. Here is an overview of the procedure we will use this afternoon, which is further detailed in today's conduct of hearing guidelines, copies of which have been distributed and posted online over the past several weeks, as well as provided today in various locations around the building. Does everybody have one that wants one?
I printed 50.
No, okay. All right. I will read the legal notice, and then we'll call on the clerks for an explanation of the case. Testimony will then begin for those of you who have registered to testify. The applicants will go first. The applicants and any of their expert witnesses will collectively have up to 90 minutes to present their testimony. Others in favor of the project can then offer testimony, each of whom will be limited to a total of 3 minutes. Those registered to speak in opposition will then testify. Up to 90 minutes total will be allotted to the spokespersons for the opponents of the project and any of their expert witnesses. Others opposed to the project who have registered can then offer testimony. Each person will be limited to a total of 3 minutes. The second round is for purpose of rebuttal. Only those who spoke in the first round may speak in rebuttal. Please confine your remarks to addressing the arguments made by the other side which you feel you have not adequately addressed. You do not need to repeat the same arguments made in the first round. The applicants and the main spokespersons for the opponents will be limited to a total of 45 minutes for each group in rebuttal. Others offering testimony in rebuttal will be limited to a maximum of 2 minutes. Staff will signal when testimony time limits are being approached. Time allocations may be adjusted at the discretion of the RPC to promote fairness or expedite the hearing process. There will be unlimited time for questions from RPC members of all those who are testifying. Because of the need to prepare a clear record of your testimony, I ask that only one person come to the table at a time. If possible, please come forward in the order depicted on the registration list. We're going to deviate from that, and the applicants are going to bring all 4 members up at once. When you come forward to testify, please state your name and address, and then present your testimony. Statements from the back of the room and exchanges between parties will not be allowed. Speakers presenting repetitive and irrelevant testimony will be excused from the table. Following this hearing, the committee will adjourn and reconvene to its regular business meeting. You may observe those proceedings but may not participate in them. Please take this opportunity to silence cell phones, pagers, and similar devices. Thank you. Grant?
Thanks, Ken. I've been asked to give a brief overview of the regulations, the state regulations that govern conditional use permits. I'm going to focus primarily on section 59.69 of the statutes and 2 or 3 items. The first is what I'll call the quantum of proof. The quantum of proof in this case is substantial evidence. Substantial evidence is defined in the statutes as facts and information. How's this? I don't know. I don't think this is working, Laddie.
It is working, it just can't go any higher than that. Yeah, we'll try.
Can you hear me now? How about this?
Put them all in. It's the best we can do, Grant.
Okay, is this better? I'll use the microphone and I'll project. Substantial evidence is defined in the statutes as facts and information other than merely personal preferences or speculation directly pertaining to the requirements and conditions an applicant must meet to obtain a conditional use permit, and that reasonable persons would accept in support of a conclusion. What that means, and I'm directing my comments primarily to the people who will be speaking during public comment, it's not going to do any good to come forward and say, I like this project or I don't like this project. You have to explain why and tie it into the 17 factors of the ordinance that the Resource Planning Committee has to consider when it deliberates whether or not to grant the conditional use permit. The burden of proof, which includes both the burden of production and the burden of persuasion, is on the applicant. Statutes again provide that the applicant must demonstrate that the application and all requirements and conditions established by the county relating to the conditional use are or will be satisfied, both of which must be supported again by substantial evidence. By the time we're done with this hearing, you're going to be tired of the words substantial evidence, but it's important. The risk of non-persuasion remains on the applicant, starting with the application and continuing through the hearing. The burden of proof and risk of non-persuasion may shift to the opposing parties if the applicant produces enough evidence, again, substantial evidence, to prove a particular fact or issue. Second thing I want to discuss briefly is 59.69 also contains a preemption clause. What that means is that the county cannot impose a condition in an area that is regulated primarily by the state or federal government. So there are limits to the conditions that the county can impose on the conditional use permit. There are areas that are going to be under the exclusive control or jurisdiction of the state or federal government, and the county simply can't impose a requirement that's more strict or less strict if state and federal law preempts the county. So thank you for your time and attention. One other thing I was asked to address, because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, Chairperson Fisher indicated in his remarks, but please make sure your cell phones are silenced, and please resist the impulse to comment, clap, give words of approval or disapproval when people are testifying. The job of the audience is to be quiet as a proverbial church mouse. Those of you that signed up to speak will have an opportunity to come forward, but again, because this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, we would ask that you refrain from commenting from the audience as the hearing is going on. Thanks.
This might cause feedback, though. Can you hear me now? Okay. I just have a couple of logistical things. Bathrooms are between those two exit signs back there by the cherries, if you need to avail yourself of the facilities. As I believe Grant or Ken mentioned, I only printed about 50 copies of the hearing guidelines. I tried to put them at the ends of each rows, so hopefully you can share with your neighbors and take a look at those if you want, although I think Ken went over the pertinent parts. There are also copies of the list of people that registered to testify on both sides. Again, I printed about 50 copies. They should be at the ends of each row. As Ken indicated, the applicants are all going to come up as a group and get 90 minutes to offer their testimony. I will time that 90 minutes and give a 10-minute warning, 5-minute warning, and then the Resource Planning Committee will ask them questions. We'll do the same thing on the other side, except that the opponents are going to come up one by one for their 90-minute block. They've mapped out how they want to talk, and then the Resource Planning Committee will question those folks individually. So I will let them know after each person how much time has been used up of that 90-minute block. When we get to the, there's about 10 people that registered separately to speak as individuals. You'll get 3 minutes each. I'll try and wave my arms around when you've got about a minute left to keep time there. And then, again, each of those people will be questioned by the Resource Planning Committee if they wish at the end of their testimony. There are sign-in sheets. There should be a clipboard floating around the room. Please sign in. We're just going to probably end up scanning those pages and attaching them to the record of this hearing. I'm not going to try and type all of them up. As Supervisor Fisher stated, the RPC is not going to render its decision until after the hearing at a regular business meeting. So once the hearing is over tonight, they are going to adjourn into a regular business meeting. More than likely, what they will be doing is setting another business meeting date for next week at which they would render their decision. After if any materials are, and that meeting will be posted. It doesn't require a publication in the paper, but it'll be a regularly posted business meeting agenda. If any materials are turned in this evening, we will post one final packet tomorrow online. That'll be packet H. Same place all the other ones have been posted. But once the hearing is over tonight, the record is closed. You are not to be giving us any more stuff or calling or emailing or trying to lobby the RPC or anything. The record will be closed after the hearing. Decision letter copies will be sent to all who testify. And I think that's it. Laddie is recording, obviously, and he can let you know when and where and how to access his handiwork.
Thank you, Mariah. Yes, Sevastopol TV is recording this event tonight. It will be placed on YouTube in entirety, probably by Saturday, depending on how long it is. The longer it is, the longer it takes me to process it. It'll also be broadcast on local channel, TV channel Charter 986, if you get Charter anywhere in Door and Kewaunee counties. I'm not sure what time it'll be, probably 9 o'clock Saturday morning, but there'll be a schedule. If you go to doorbell.net/video, there'll be a broadcast schedule. We're also streaming live through YouTube right now. We think we are. It's an experiment. And if you want to go to that, it would be at youtube.com/user, USER/Sherman Bay, SHERMANBAY. And if you want a card from me, and after, come up and I'll give you a card with all this stuff on it. Okay? Who's next?
Okay.
Back to Ken.
All right, thank you. Okay, Town of Sevastopol. Margaret Dreitzer Turk, as trustee of the Margaret Dreitzer Trust, requests on behalf of Quarry Bluff Development, LLC, a conditional use permit as required by Door County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, sections 2.05 sub 3A, 4.07 sub 2, 4.08 sub 8, and 11.04. The applicant proposes to establish establish multiple occupancy development and campground land uses on 6 parcels, which would be combined into one 57.76 acre lot. There would be 117 total units, of which 115 would consist of both an occupancy unit residential dwelling and a campsite for a recreational vehicle. The remaining 2 units would consist of only a campsite. The overall development would also contain a clubhouse, private storage buildings, recreation courts, and 3 stormwater runoff ponds. 49.53 acres of the property are zoned recreational commercial or RC. 7.65 acres are zoned single-family residential 20,000 or SF20, and 0.58 acres are zoned small estate or SE. The property is located adjacent to and east of George K. Pinney County Park on Bayshore Drive in Section 12, Town 28 North, Range 25 East, and Section 13, Town 28 North, Range 25 East, and Section 18, Town 28 North, Range 26 East.
Okay, starting on page 12.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
You gotta hold it. It's got
Here we go, if you can reduce the size of that picture, Mariah. So just giving a bird's eye view generally of where the property is located in the town of Sevastopol. There you go, thank you. On the very west shore along the Bay Shore. Going to the next page now, showing additional roads. There we go, as we're zooming in. Thank you. And then going to page 17 in packet D. The lot here outlined in black is currently made up of 6 separate parcels which will be combined. You'll notice that the development is only proposed on the east side of Bayshore Road and does not contain any waterfront property. The property is made up of just over 49 acres zoned recreational commercial, just over a half acre of property which is zoned small estate, and 7.5, just over, acres made up of property which is zoned single-family residential 20,000. The lot area, that being zoned recreational commercial, is made up of 49.5 acres. Again, 6 lots which will be joined up. This is based on surveyed data. And then as far as frontage, I said no water frontage, but there's about 720 plus or minus feet along Bayshore, which is also County Highway B. As you can tell, it's an existing abandoned non-metallic mine. There are 2 driveways currently on the southern part of the property, as shown with the hand there. And the traffic pattern is moderately high, especially during the summertime. Water and sanitary will be provided by private wells as well as a private on-site wastewater treatment system. As far as topography, we're going to a panoramic view, D19. There we go. As you can tell, the development will take place on the plateau, which is here, with about a 14-foot drop in this direction heading towards the entrance, but relatively flat. And then there is also a 38-foot drop at the base right by the additional parking there for George Pinney Park. Looking at the comprehensive zoning on D10. I'm taking this off. Give me 1 second. This will be easier. Looking at the map, you can tell the yellow area along the shoreline, both north and south, is zoned single-family residential 20,000. It's developed with single-family residences as well as some vacant parcel. The large pink area with the star is zoned recreational commercial, which is where this development is being proposed. To the north in the pink color is small estate. Those are small residential lots as well as vacant lots. The blue area to the north and east is zoned estate. That is made up of residential lots, which are much larger, as well as vacant and agricultural land. You'll also note to the south, there is one small area zoned recreational commercial. You may be familiar with, I believe it's Birmingham's Cottage Resort, which is also a multiple occupancy development. That's the comprehensive zoning. I'm going to have Mariah switch to the web map. Here we have highlighted in gray the area that is within shoreline zoning jurisdiction. That's 1,000 feet from the ordinary high water mark of the bay. We could only highlight one parcel at this point in time, which again, there will be 6 joined, but you can tell that just about half of the property is within shoreline zoning, of which there's not many requirements at all, but the development does meet that of a 35-foot height limit. Shoreline zoning has been in effect since 1968. The bulk of this area has been zoned recreation or recreational commercial since that time. Going to D19 now. Once again, this area is an abandoned non-metallic mine. At the time it was abandoned, there were no rules that required the site to be reclaimed, which is why you see the exposed bedrock throughout. The act of developing this land does not constitute under zoning or under Soil and Water Conservation Department regulations, nor under the state reclamation plan requirements, this site to be reclaimed. We've had 2 zoning administrators walk the site prior to snow, and they found no rock holes that would be regulated by the county zoning ordinance. Oh, and the development of this property does not constitute non-metallic mining as a use under our ordinance. Going to packet B16. The area outlined in yellow here represents the area that is zoned recreational commercial. You'll notice that, I'm skipping ahead. Recreational commercial under the zoning ordinance is intended for uses such as this multiple occupancy development. And the development, as you see here outlined in yellow, is going to be made up of both a multiple occupancy development, and we're going to try really hard not to use acronyms, but if we do, it would come out as MOD, but multiple occupancy development, and campgrounds, which is allowed in this recreational commercial zoning district by conditional use, which is why we're all here tonight. The other zoning districts that we had mentioned, there are some small amounts of that. Small estate and single-family residential 20,000 does not allow for the multiple occupancy development or the campsites. So you will see that none of them are within those areas. Those districts were not used, and the acreage associated with them were not used to calculate the density of this development. However, parking areas, driveways, sanitary systems, and green space can be allowed and are allowed in those districts. So I'm sure you've seen the staff report. Within that, we've provided definitions of campground, which is having 4 or more camping units on a lot. Again, this is one large lot with many camping units, 117 proposed. Camping unit does include a recreational vehicle, which is what is being proposed specifically. Within the campground regulations, no more than 2 dwelling units are allowed for the campground owner and manager. The residences in this development are all under the multiple occupancy development, not under the campground rules. So I'm going to start off by looking at the campground regulations. The development meets all the campground regulations, and on the diagram that we have up here, everything highlighted in blue is designated as the campground area. So as far as density is concerned, under the campground regulations, the maximum amount is 10 camping units per acre, which would constitute 11.7 acres dedicated to the campground use in blue. There will be no camping cabins within this development. And then going to B25, the campsite size. The minimum campground, or excuse me.
That's not the right page.
Oops, B25?
25.
The site, there we go. Okay. Each campsite, per the ordinance, minimum is required 25 feet by 40, as you'll see on this diagram. This is a typical diagram showing 60 by 75. And that's the top portion of this. Thank you, Mariah. Okay, moving on to the multiple occupancy development. Again, in that previous picture, B25, this is being shown as orange. We're going to get it up momentarily.
Except that on 25.
25?
It's on one now.
Oh, sorry.
Pause. Nope.
In any case, I'll start talking about the multiple occupancy development,
Just show some pictures.
which is defined as 2 or more detached buildings provided with 2 or more occupancy units. Some examples of such could be hotels or a cottage resort. Again, we are talking about one lot with 115 single-family dwelling units. So this constitutes a multiple occupancy development.
I can't find the one with the color.
That's okay. 17 on packet B.
All right. There we go.
So as I said, the development proposed will contain 115 detached buildings, single-family residences, all on one lot. We'll get into later, there's a variety of either 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3 bedrooms that could be placed on each lot. As far as density, if you remember back, we talked about having 49.5 acres zoned recreational commercial. 11.7 acres is subtracted from that total amount for the campground density. What remains is 37.83 acres, which can be used towards the multiple occupancy development. According to the ordinance, you can have 10 bedrooms per acre, which would allow for a maximum of 378 bedrooms. What is being proposed is 115 single-family residents. If all of them were 3 bedrooms, that would equal 345, which is roughly 91% the maximum. So they are not proposing the maximum allowed. As far as impervious surfaces, under the multiple occupancy development regulations, 35% maximum impervious surface, they are proposing 31.56. As far as height limitations, those are all in compliance. Spacing, if we go back to B25, to that typical site, and again, typical, these may all be at angles, but this is the typical size. If we can pan down to the lower end, the lower half showing the single-family residence being the same 75 by 60. The requirement within the ordinance is that between each single-family residence on this one lot, there shall be at least 20 feet separating the buildings. Here, the typical site shows 30 feet. As mentioned earlier, the accessory buildings that are proposed, if we go to B17, They're shown on kind of the right-hand side there, Mariah is showing. Those are all within the allowance of the multiple occupancy development, which does allow one accessory building per structure, and obviously they're not going to have as many as that. At this point in time, unless I missed something, I'm going to turn the rest of the staff report over to Mariah.
Can everybody hear me? I think I'm going to do the same thing Sue did and unclip this. So as Sue indicated, this is a multiple occupancy development, and that is the reason why it's not subject to the Door County Land Division ordinance. They are not talking about creating separate individual lots. So even though these are going to be a series of what people would consider single-family homes, when you have more than one single-family home on a lot, it is a multiple occupancy development. What they're doing when they show those lines, as I understand it, is they are condominiumizing the ownership. So they are selling the right to somebody to build a home in those orange areas. So this is not subject to the Land Division ordinance because they are not creating lots. They're just condominiumizing the ownership, and it is not a site condominium that's regulated under the county's Land Division ordinance as well. So both of those uses, again, are proposed on one 57-acre lot. Condominiumizing the ownership does not divide the land. As far as some other zoning considerations, as Sue already pointed out, the purpose of the zoning district does include recreational uses such as multiple occupancy developments. Both of these uses are allowed. Can you find the page for the packet? In the staff report packets, which is packet D, so it's going to find me the page. We always, for the Resource Planning Committee, start at least an initial list of conditions that they might want to consider if they're inclined to grant the proposal. And there we go. So those start on D5. And then obviously the committee can add whatever other conditions they would like to that as well. Some things to note for sure, because they are ordinance requirements, is that when a conditional use permit is issued, that permit is valid for a year. So they basically have that first year to take out some of the more significant regular zoning permits, and then those regular zoning permits are good for a year as well. Now I'm going to scroll down in that packet to the bottom of page 5 and talk about comprehensive plan considerations. So this is the county comprehensive plan considerations, and I'm going to show you the map that I'll be talking about in a minute. So on page 9 of packet D is the future land use map, RPC members, if you want to follow along. So the county comprehensive plan was developed taking into account what town plans were already out there. So we took all of the land use designations from the town plans and put them in the county plan. So the county plan right now shows the bulk of this property as being in a commercial future land use designation. And keep in mind, this is land use designation in a plan, not zoning. And as we've already talked about 40, as well as is zoned commercial, about 49 acres of the property lies within areas that are designated as commercial on that county future land use map. There's a smidge of property that's considered parks and recreation. That's this tiny little orange slice right there. And then there is some that is designated as residential. That's these yellow portions right there. But the bulk of the property on the county comprehensive plan is designated as commercial. This area has been designated in the county plan for those land use descriptions above since 2009. The comprehensive plan does recognize in the text of the plan that outlying commercially zoned areas exist, and recommends undertaking those developments carefully and with consideration for surrounding uses. Planning staff in our department reviewed the remainder of the text of the county plan and pointed out 2 policies that they thought might be relevant. And this is at the Resource Planning Committee's discretion to interpret these. One is Goal 2, which has to do with protecting natural features. Let me go up to the page. RPC members, it's page 7 in packet D, if you want to look. Protecting and preserving surface water, groundwater, wildlife habitats, and natural features. And then she provided the policies and action items related to that goal. I will point out that some of the things that are written there are not allowed under state law anymore. As Grant Thomas, County Corporation Counsel, indicated, the county is not allowed to attach conditions to a conditional use permit that are more restrictive than something that the state regulates. So some of these things that we mapped out 10 years ago are not allowed anymore. The second goal that might possibly be something that the committee thinks is relevant to this project is Goal 4, which is maintaining, preserving, and enhancing the county's rural atmosphere and agricultural heritage. And again, we've provided the policies and the action items from the comprehensive plan there for you. And then planning staff did not find any other action items or text within the plan that seemed to be relevant to this proposal. So with that, I guess we can have Resource Planning Committee's members ask any questions of us if you want us to go over anything zoning regulation wise, or let us know.
Okay, any questions of Sue or Mariah? John?
Mariah or Sue, does changing the parcel from multiple parcels into one parcel change the zoning lines at all?
The question was whether the zoning is affected in any way by combining the lots, and the answer is no. The zoning map boundaries will stay the same. The lot lines underneath them for those 6 would just basically get erased.
Anybody else? No? No? Go ahead.
If you could just clarify about the impervious surface, that it includes all the roadways, rooftops, structures of the buildings, driveways, and the accessory buildings?
Yes, so the impervious surface that was talked about, requirement of no more than 35%, and the development that is proposed in the entirety, including the driveways, the rooftops, etc., constitutes 31.56, I believe it was. Yes, that's the whole development.
Okay. Good.
Actually,
Dave?
to expand on that and make sure, you presume there were a number of rooftops for every unit?
That's built out max as they have it proposed.
Right, for some of the calculations that we did in working with the applicants, we assumed kind of most built-out scenario, I guess. So in terms of calculating things like parking and everything else, we assumed that all of the sites were going to have a 3-bedroom home, which we think is probably not the case. They're assuming more like 2. But yeah.
Okay. Vinnie, got another one? No. Good? Good? Can you folks hear us up back there?
Not really.
No? So I still have to lean in and talk into it like this? I will do that. Okay, if there's no further questions, then would the applicant please come forward?
Remember, when you come to the table, please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you for having us. I will try to stay close to the microphone, and I will pass it to the other team members as we go through the process. My name is Peter Hirth. I'm a registered professional engineer in the state of Wisconsin. I'm the president of Bodwin Surveying and Engineering. The work address is 312 North Fifth Ave in Sturgeon Bay. My home address is 6361 Bluff Court Trail, town of Sevastopol, about 2/3 of a mile northeast of this project site. I'll now pass the microphone.
My name is Mike Parent, reside in Ephraim, born and raised in Door County, 43 years experience in construction, excavation, site development. Majority of the work was done in Door County, part of a 3rd-generation family-owned business. Participated in numerous real estate development projects in Door County, involved in blasting, aggregate production, utility installation, mass site grading, septic systems, landscaping. At various times throughout my career, either been an owner or had operational agreements to over a dozen non-metallic mines in Door County. Owned the first quarry in the state of Wisconsin that had to obtain a reclamation plan. master's degree in construction management from Purdue University, licensed master plumber, and a licensed realtor in the state of Wisconsin.
Tom Gall's been a resident up here for 41 years now. I've had several other businesses in Door County, but I've been developing for about 25, 26 years. Did projects such as North Haven and Fish Creek, Mariners Point, and Sister Bay, Brooks Farm and Egg Harbor. I've done stuff in Florida, projects, and also in the Milwaukee area.
Need your address too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Address is 3586 Gibraltar Road, Fish Creek.
By the way, the mic comes loose, so you can just pass the mic if you want to make it a little bit easier. Okay.
My name is Kurt Keelish, real estate appraiser, known as a forensic appraiser. Our company is the Forensic Appraisal Group Limited. We're based at 116 East Bell Street, and is in Neenah, Wisconsin. My address, my personal address is 2422 Forest Manor Court in Neenah, Wisconsin. I'll be speaking about the value issues here, which is the area of our expertise.
And I am Renee Borkovitz. I work at Bodwin Surveying and Engineering. I'm also a professional engineer there. Our business address, 312 North Fifth Avenue, Sturgeon Bay, and personal address is 5987 Old County OR in Sturgeon Bay.
Yeah, you have to speak right into the microphone.
Right into it, yeah.
Like this. Comes out.
Okay, if you could get my PowerPoint queued up, please. Thank you.
Is that better? Did you hear that? So you'll have to speak up.
I will. This is just a copy of my PowerPoint if you want to hand it out to the committee members. Probably easier for tonight's discussion to just follow along on the screen, but you can have that for reference once the testimony is done. Sue and Mariah did a great job of going through the current zoning. I'm not going to waste time on being repetitive. The one thing that wasn't mentioned is the Door County Farmland Preservation Plan, which is shown on the left side of the screen. Our project's in the red shaded area, not the green shaded area, which is designated for prime agricultural farmland. On the right side on the map, it shows the farmland preservation preserved lands inventory, and our project is there, so it's not in one of the shaded areas on the preserved lands. So, quick project history. The Dreitzers have owned this property for the past 28 years. I'll show a few old plat maps here. This 1985 plat map shows that the yellow shaded area was owned by Dewey Concrete. The Dreitzers purchased that property. This is it's been developed over the years by the Dreitzers. Their primary change in land use, this is what it looked like in 1992, as you can see on the photo. There really is no residential development upslope. One road here, but a lot of this has been developed since 1992. This is the project site itself. The 1999 plat book still shows that the Dreitzers own approximately, at that time, 101 acres. The phasing of this development was that the Dreitzers had been splitting off residential lots on top of the escarpment as well as along the bay. Since that time, many of those lots have been split off. The yellow highlighted areas are the portions of land in this area still owned by the Dreitzers. As you can see, it's our project site on the face of the quarry, as well as residential lots in the surrounding area. So what we did when we started this development, the developers approached my company and obviously the first thing you look at is the zoning, what the zoning rules allow, and what makes the most sense for this project. So this list actually on the screen are things that would not have, uses that would not have required a conditional use permit or this hearing process. At the end of the day, the developers felt that the proposal in front of you was a better use for this property than what's listed there. As Sue mentioned, we certainly do meet the current zoning as far as the number of bedrooms allowed and the number of what they classify as campsites allowed. So what exactly is being proposed? It'll be an upscale residential development offering potential for a modest-sized vacation home and/or hard surface pad with hookups for a motor coach. We feel like, well, we know that there's no other facility in Door County or even Wisconsin that offers this type of Class A motor coach limited opportunity for residents. Class A motor coach is shown on the screen here. That's a fairly typical view. Again, many of these are in excess of $1 million. The two shown on the screen are actually used units listed for over $1 million. So who uses the motor coaches and who will be moving into our neighborhood? The demographic research shown on the screen here shows that 87% are over the age of 45, 72% over the age of 55, 38% over the age of 65, with 50% of them having incomes of greater than $100,000 per year, of which many of those are retired individuals. So again, we're going to do a lot of talking tonight about compatibility with neighborhood, things of that issue, and we've got quite a bit of testimony on that. But again, the demographic itself is, you know, it will be a good fit for that community. So what's there today? This is a picture of the quarry floor. As described, it was an old quarry. It was abandoned and left alone for years and years, and much of the quarry surface is still bare stone. So we're going to show a video here in a bit, but one of the concerns, obviously, by the opposition is sinkholes, crevices, cracks, contamination sources, things of that nature. So as we look through the video in a moment here, you know, keep an eye out for that. This gives you, I think this 30-second video will give you a good idea of what a little tour around the plateau looks like today. Go ahead. So what I'll go through now is kind of a view of what this project's going to end up looking like and how it may fit into the neighborhood. This, I won't spend any time on this. This is the same slide Sue had gone through with the densities and the number of units. So we had renderings done. A rendering company took our CAD files and did a real life, best they can, images for us based on the actual grades on the site. So it should be a fairly accurate depiction of what it could look like, what it's going to look like. So this is a view from the west looking east. In the foreground, you'll see Penny Park. In the back, you'll see our proposed project with the large storm pond. There's a blow up. Our project itself, access would come from the south. It would come up the newly created road. We have internal roads throughout our project. We have a storm pond here, storm pond here, storm pond down below. I'll go into more details as we go through it. There's a recreational area here with some pickleball courts and picnic areas. this would be the main clubhouse area. Just a look on kind of what our entrance drive will look like. There's the pickleball courts and picnic area. These renderings take our architectural plans and show how the mix with the motor coach pad would fit and kind of the feel and look of what it's going to look like. Sue went over the dimensions. I think one of the key points of this slide is that the distance, going the wrong way. The distance here is greater than an SF20 setback that we're proposing. I've got about 50 feet on average between the motor coach pads, and obviously from a marketing standpoint, the developers are trying to preserve views out to the sunsets and the water views as best we can by allowing some of that greater spacing. So I'd gone to Petoskey, which is a very similar project, on October 5th of 2019. And I really wanted to see it firsthand. At that point, this project had already received a lot of bad publicity. We heard references to manufactured homes and trailer parks, and so I went there and I did a drive-through, and this is just a video of the drive-through, and I'll talk a little bit as we play. The video's about a minute. So as you can see, this is an end product. It's very well landscaped. Each unit has the capability of the parking on the motor coach pad. Many of the units have the outdoor kitchens. Most of the pads are bricked and very well done. The road itself, you can see there's a rolled curb on that one, an asphalt curb. We'd actually end up with a concrete curb. There's a sample of their storm pond. Some units have little homes by them, some don't. Some are just the pads. Depends, you buy the whole thing and you can either put in a home or a pad or just a home or just a pad or both. The trend there, based on discussions with the owners of that one, is that people are asking for up to the 1,200 square foot home. That's what people are expecting in modern day. And these images here are some larger homes which they've been building recently there. I'll flip through a few more photos I took while I was there that day. I can just flip through if it's easier. Okay, thank you. So there's just a normal pad. Not all of them are fancy with stamped concrete and stain. This is kind of the bottom of the line look. There's a small home with a pergola and outdoor kitchen next to it. All have hookups for the motor coaches. There's some fancier stained look. There's some brick. Typical outdoor kitchen with the pergola. Kind of a street scene showing two neighbors who have the motor coaches there at the same time. These are a shot of a little bit bigger of a unit that was recently completed. Street scene here, you can see everything is landscaped well. Again, they have the curb. We'll also have a curb for stormwater. There's a stormwater pond with fountain. We'll certainly have those as well. So that's kind of the feel of the community. I'll move on now to a little bit of discussion about tax impacts that we feel a benefit of this project could be. We've heard a lot of talk about should this property be preserved for a different use. Certainly, the tax impact at full build-out, we're estimating up to $428,000 a year from a tax benefit. The opponents will challenge some of our valuation numbers. We did a little more research on that as well. We contacted the town of Bear Creek where the Petoskey project is, and they do some kind of a reduced appraisal thing. Not an expert, I'll disclose that right now. But the town chairman, town assessor, emailed today and said that the true estimated fair market value of everything associated with Harse Grove is currently at $72 million. So we'll try to go through each of the 17 criteria in your packet and hopefully show that we satisfy each one of those. So the first thing we need to talk about is property values, and I'm going to turn it over here.
Thank you. Again, my name is Kurt Kielish, a forensic appraiser. I am the senior appraiser at the Forensic Appraisal Group as well as the president of the company. I would like to hand out these. Okay, thank you. And that is my consulting report. And the PowerPoint is basically a very brief view of the consulting report. The details are in the report, so I will not dwell on those. My assignment was to analyze whether or not the Quarry Bluff development is going to negatively impact residential property value that is either abutting or near proximity to the development. In order to do that, I have a scope of work. In the scope of work, we looked at 3 different components. The very first was the literature review, and that's to see what has been published out there dealing with such developments. The second was a Realtor survey, and the third was an assessment office phone survey of real estate assessors or county appraisers. First, let's look at the literature survey. What we did in the literature survey is we looked at what is published in the general public domain in dealing with articles that dealt with the impact of single-family properties that would be potentially impacted by a luxury RV resort. We used Google search for that. We also looked into appraisal publications. This would be the Appraisal Institute and the International Right-of-Way Association. They both have publications and they have archives of which I can get because I'm a paid member of them. And then lastly, we looked at the RV related publications. Possibly they would have something as well dealing with this question. Well, what we discovered is that there were no studies done. There's very little on this information other than the fact that the luxury RV reports are a relatively new phenomenon. From there, we went to our Realtor survey. Now, with our Realtor survey, what we wanted to do is we wanted to ask realtors, the people who are in the trenches doing the buying and the selling, and representing buyers and sellers, what their opinion would be to the impact of single-family residential properties that are in close proximity or abutting a similar type of development. The first thing we had to do is we had to locate similar type of developments. There weren't a whole lot, but we did find about 6 of them. Second is we collected data about each one of these resorts. Then we created a mailing list to all the realtors in the area. I'm a realtor member as well, and had access to the realtor mailing list, email list. Then we developed a online survey, which consisted of 3 questions. Took approximately 30 to 35 seconds for them to fill out this online survey. And then we used a online survey source. In this case, we used SurveyMonkey. The 3 questions that we asked is the very first one is to know their knowledge. And the first was, are they familiar with whatever that local resort is that we're going to have them focus on? Obviously, it's not this resort because they do not know anything about the Quarry Bluff. It's the one that is in their close proximity. Second is, we want their opinion to the impact that that resort would have to single-family property values that would be in near proximity to that resort. And third, sort of a similar question, but now expanded to the economy, we wanted to know what their opinion was of whether such a development benefited or did not benefit or had no impact on the local economy. These are the 6 resort developments that we surveyed. The subject property is located up there in Wisconsin. The Hearthside is in the northern point of Michigan. We have Mountain Falls in North Carolina. We have the Bellaterra Shores, which is in Alabama, and very close to that is the Buena Vista motor coach development, which is in Orange Beach, Alabama. And then out west, we have the Zion River, which is in Virgin, Utah. And then lastly, we have Desert Shores, which is in Indio, California. So the survey respondents, what we did is we had a total number of surveys of 309 that were sent out. Of the 309, we received 35 responses. Overall, that gives us an 11% response rate. And if online surveys, if you target 10% and above. So with all of them included, we hit that target. But in particular, we are concerned about the Desert Shores response. There's only 2, which represented only 3% of the 2. One of them had no knowledge of Desert Shores itself. So we decided, well, what would it be if we took that group out, and it raised it to a 14% response rate, which is acceptable in the realm of doing surveys. Now, right here I have a pie graph that shows how these surveys came out as far as number of respondents. You can see that Hearthside and Mountain Falls were the majority of all the responses. Survey results to the questions, the 3 questions that I put forth. 97% were familiar with the local resort. Only 3% was not. That was the one individual from California. On the second question of dealing with the impact of the local resort to single-family property values, 2 said there was a negative impact, approximately 9%. 12 said it had a positive impact to the local property values, or 34%. And 21 or 60% said it had no measurable impact whatsoever. And the third question on dealing with the impact of the local economy, 31 said that it impacted the local economy positively, 0 said negatively, and 11% said no measurable impact. To put this in a more pie-shaped graphic form, that with the first question, that the majority, 97%, had knowledge of the resort that they were commenting on. In the second opinion, you can see that 94% of respondents said at least no negative impact. The 2 colors of blue deal with both no measurable or positive. The red is negative. And in the third question, you can see that no one believed that it had a negative impact on the local economy. The majority, 89%, believed that it was positively impacted. Overall, 100% of the respondents said no negative impact. Now, the assessment phone survey was also done. We started with the Buena Vista, and just to explain how this survey worked, our office staff would contact the surveyor or the county official that would have knowledge of developments or property values, possibly what is known as a county appraiser. And they would ask them about the specific project that you see up there that would be localized, and if it had any impact to the property values and whether impact did it have to the community at large. This was done on the phone, and then that recording that was recorded, that was put in bullet point form with their responses. It was sent back to the individuals for their confirmation. We have all the confirmations on these. On the first one in Buena Vista, this is in Orange Beach, Alabama. Here we spoke with the city planner, and generally he had positive things to say about the development there. Said it did work well with their smart growth community. It was located on a beach road near beach homes. that it was a very similar resort as what we're looking at today with high-end RVs. Most importantly, the question he answered is they did not have any measurable impact to single-family homes, and that it impacted the economy in a very positive way. And generally, the community was not strongly opposed to the RV park being developed, once it became known that it was RVs that would be required and not travel trailers. The Assessment Office survey for Desert Shores, this is in California. Now, Desert Shores, what we spoke to there was the appraiser for Riverside County. This appraiser said it had a positive impact on the community. It was a positive high-end quality resort attracting affluent buyers, which had a positive effect on the economy of the area. He also said it is in the middle of the residential area, and he has not heard anything negative about the resort in dealing with property values. The Assessment Office survey was Zion River. This is in Virgin, Utah. Now, this is the one we did not have a Realtor survey for because there were too few Realtors to actually have any kind of survey that would make any sense. So what we did is we just talked to the administrators there at at Virgin, Utah. We spoke first with the Certified General Appraiser of Washington County. His whole point was they are a tourist area. They're oriented towards tourism. The Zion National Park in Utah is north of their area, does attract a lot of tourists, and the town is focused on tourism. His opinion was that the homes are not devalued by the Zion River Resort, and it had a positive impact on the economy. We also spoke with the Frankie Giffords, who is a deputy town clerk. He believed that it was an asset to the town, said it was a beautiful resort, and again, had a positive impact to the economy in tourism. And lastly, we spoke with the zoning administrator, Mr. Gene Garat, and he filled in with a lot more details. Again, the highlighted ones is that the RV resort had no negative impact to the surrounding property values, and that the land prices in the area had increased, that were close to Zion National Park. He also noticed that a number of the individuals who would come and utilize this resort, if they liked the area, they ended up staying and purchasing a home and land. Now, there are some critiques on the resorts that we used, and I would like to address those. The number one critique was that there was no or very little surrounding single-family surrounding these resorts or near proximity. Let's go back to Desert Shores. You see Desert Shores right here is the development. That all the way around it, this is residential single family. This is residential single family to the west, all residential single family, and to the south. There is some commercial to the southwest, and directly east is another RV development. Again, that this one, both the county appraiser as well as the realtors believe that there was no impact, negative impact to the single families that were surrounding the area. Zion River, I just mentioned before, where we had several comments on. Right in the middle here is the Zion River development. You can see the river snaking around right here. I believe that's Highway 8 or 9 is right above it. Further north is the Zion National Park. Here are 3 spots of residential development. You see residential to the northwest, that is a small lot residential. To the northeast is a larger rural type residential. And then directly to the southwest across the river, in full view of the development, is a residential subdivision that has just started, and you can see there are 4 homes there already. Again, this Zion River was stated by all 3 government officials as having no negative impact to single-family property value. When we look at Buena Vista Coastal, right here is Buena Vista Coastal. North of it is nothing. To the south, of course, is the beach homes. These are all high-end beach homes. To the southwest are beach homes and then cluster homes in the corner here. Directly west are single-family, more traditional single-family homes. Again, the Buena Vista Coastal, that both the assessor and the realtors mentioned that there was no negative impact. Here's Bellaterra, more like in the country, and there are 2 residential developments there, one directly to the west, a relatively new one, and then to the southwest, this one had been established. Again, they stated that the Realtor stated that there was no negative impact. In Hearthside Grove, this was in Michigan. Hearthside Grove is located right here where the pointer is. Due to the north is a small residential area off the highway. Directly to the east is a residential area, very rural, with a wooded area in between. As a matter of fact, right across the street from there is a open quarry. And then to the south east of the development is another residential development, more rural residential, large lots. And then directly to the south is another small residential development. Again, that all but one of the realtors said that there was either no impact or, there was no impact to the single-family property values. And then we have the Mountain Falls. This is in North Carolina. And this one, if you can imagine it, this is a mountain. You can see the valley coming down to the river and then it going back up. Right on the side of it is the Mountain Falls development, which is across from the highway. Directly across the highway to the north is residential development, somewhat oriented on the lakes. To the west, the same type of development. And then you get up on the mountaintop that's to the northeast, residential development with a view of the motor coach development. And then further over, residential mountaintop development. Again, this is a much higher elevation with views to the west. And all but one realtor on this one said that there was no negative impact to single-family property values. Then the last thing we wanted to look at was stigma. I was asked to look at the stigma. Our company is well known in this area. We have done well over 36 studies dealing with impacts of various things that are related to stigma. Our studies have been quoted and utilized by realtors and appraisers throughout the nation. I personally have given testimony to the state of Wisconsin, the Senate, Joint Senate-House Committee hearings, to the Wisconsin Public Service Commission, also to Illinois and the Wind Siting Council there, Wyoming and Oregon. In Oregon, it was by written, not in person. And we do have, I have 36 years of experience in the area of real estate appraisal. I specialize in eminent domain and stigmatized properties and litigation. So this is our area of expertise. That when we looked at this, we do believe that there is a temporary stigma that is on this project, on the residential property values that are either abutting or in near proximity. I do believe that because of when we did a research on it, there are a number of signs out there in opposition to the development, as well as there are some articles in the local publications, as well as, I believe, one that we had found on the local media. All of that helps develop a perception, and perception is really what moves stigma, okay? Stigma is that which negatively impacts something, in this case property, that is outside of a scientific fact, okay? It's what is perceived, what is believed. In this case, that because the perception is developed to negativity on this development at its present time, we do believe that there is a temporal stigma on the properties in the near location. However, we also believe that this is temporal in nature, that once, if the project is approved, it moves forward, that when the public sees the project as it is developed, that stigma will be erased. Certainly the signs would probably be gone at this point. And once it's erased, that stigma will no longer be there. This is part of the temporal stigma. There's many types of longevity of stigmas. There's the temporal, the midland, and then the long-term. An example of long-term stigma would be high voltage transmission lines on single-family property value. So our conclusion is that though there is a temporal stigma on this property, there would not be a long-term stigma impacting the surrounding property values. So our total conclusion is that through the literature review, which we found very little, if anything, the Realtor surveys and assessor surveys that we utilize, and the examination of the stigma, that there will not be a devaluation of single-family property values of those properties that are either abutting in near proximity or surrounding this development.
Thanks, Kurt. I'll move on to the next one of your criteria, which is similar uses. So again, reviewing the zoning maps, it's obvious that our project site is zoned RC with neighbors zoned either SE or SF20. Anytime two zoning districts abut, you're obviously going to have a slightly different change in use between those zoning districts, either be it lot size or type of use in general. The similarities of our project versus the neighborhood is, one, we're still providing vacation and retirement homes, just like many of the surrounding homes are. We're still catering to the similar demographic. We'll use similar upscale building products, creating attractive homes. We'll mandate earth tone colors. We will provide extensive landscaping around our facilities. And we will have home and motor coach pad packages that will be comparable in value to the neighbors' homes. A few differences, obviously, because ours is zoned differently. The lot sizes are not the same as the neighbors. We're aware of that. There are many uses that we outlined in the RC zoning district that would certainly be less compatible to a residential neighbor in the RC zoning district. One of the things that's interesting to look at is many of the properties in the area are zoned SF20, and the slide on the right is some SF20, and they have a 10-foot side yard, and as you can see, many people take advantage of putting as large of a structure right up to the setbacks as possible. Again, we've intentionally tried to space ours apart to preserve views and have the feel we're looking for. Here's a shot of Little Harbor from 2019. Again, fairly intensive residential use on fairly tight setbacks to lot lines and fairly close houses. Here's a slide that shows the area near the project site that has about an average of 100-foot lots all the way across the bay with each individual having their own well, their own driveways. Another shot in the area, similar situation. Now going on to the consistency with the Door County Comprehensive and Farmland Preservation Plan. I think we've covered this a bit previously. I won't waste any time on going through that. One interesting note is we did some research on what are the legalities and should the comprehensive plan be honored. I know there's going to be testimony that the Sevastopol comprehensive plan was changed recently, and the goals were to change the future land use on this parcel. My understanding is that Act 391 actually says that this board does not require that the issuance of a conditional use permit need to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So apparently there was some legal basis to that. We'll now get into more of the engineering items. Waste disposal system. So looking at the site, I'll run through very quickly. The red lines going through our project are gravity sewer, sanitary sewer. So the site slopes from this point to from the northwest to the southeast naturally. We're going to maintain those slopes, which actually allows us to feed every single home and motor coach pad with gravity sewer. The sewer would gravity flow at some point when it's all collected down the bluff into a centrally or a single holding tank that is shared by all residents. This slide also shows the water main. Water main would follow basically next to the sewer in a widened trench, in a rock trench. And again, water service would feed every unit within the development. Sewer itself, we intentionally kept the sewer piping better than 100 feet away from the edge of the existing bluff to maintain the stability. The good news is there is no lift station required for this project. It all does gravity flow. We've got a letter here from John Teichler from the County Sanitarian's office stating that at this site, based on the number of units, is required to have a holding tank. It is not suitable for an on-site septic field, traditional septic field. As described, this is a blow-up of down below where the holding tank will go. We've got a separate access point just for the holding tank trucks to come off of Bayshore Drive and back in, drive in, back up to the tank, fill, and go out without intermixing the holding tank pumper with any of our residents. As you can see, there's intense landscaping required by county ordinance between the tank itself and the highway, which is shown here. As part of our design, we dug some holes in this area, and this is actually in one of the few areas on the site where there is not bedrock, so we were able to design tanks without blasting holes. The good thing about that is if we'd ever have to put in a secondary tank based on capacity, we can simply bottom connect and add a tank next to this tank without revisiting any blasting in the area. The tank we have selected is a 40,000 gallon reinforced concrete precast tank. It's delivered to the site and installed. Once the hole is excavated, it's installed in 1 day. It comes in a top half and a bottom half. I've specified and used this exact tank in many applications throughout the state of Wisconsin. We've contacted Tony Gasser with Septic Maintenance, and he has 3 tanker trucks, each capable of hauling 7,000 gallons at a crack, and he would be our service provider, and he's confident that he can be sure that this entire project upon build-out will be serviced adequately by his company. He has some air exchange processes with his tanker trucks that actually take the air out of the tanker as you're pumping and put it back into our tank rather than releasing it out into the air. So we're cognizant of that. The good news on the placement of this tank is it is in a location that, to go back one, the closest resident is 470 feet away from our proposed pump out area. So better than a football field length away. Oh, and as part of my DSPS will approve the tank. We do need to run a ballast calculation, and that basically shows any proposed high water table, we have to accommodate for that. So my calculations on this show that the force down is greater than the force up, even if the water comes to that level. Oftentimes we can place additional fill over the top if that's a concern, or the way these tanks are manufactured, there's a honeycomb on the bottom of the concrete tanks. We can fill in those honeycombs to gain weight. Again, that would be a typical condition of this board to be sure we get the DSPS approval on something like that. Water supply, we have 2 proposed wells to serve the entire community. One here, one here. Those wells will be other than municipal public wells. So you'll hear testimony regarding the well, and you may have read testimony regarding the well submittal to the DNR. We submitted the wells as proposed today with the more restrictive OTM public wells. We were told by DNR staff that they would actually not go in as NR 811 wells, but NR 812 high-capacity private wells. And then we were told to resubmit it the way we originally submitted it with the NR 811 other than municipal public wells. So full circle, we ended up with the original design, original submittal, the way we had originally intended. We certainly weren't trying to cut corners. Both wells, whether it's classified as the private well, high cap private well, or the public well, it's constructed exactly the same as far as a water quality and safety standpoint. So, question comes up of aquifer capacity. The one note on the diagram on the left side, state code says that wells in limestone need to be cased 100 feet. Door County is a special provision. Door County wells in limestone need to be 170 feet of grouted casing, and that's what we are proposing. The detail on the right is a aquifer capacity map, and our site being here, it falls into the 200 to 400 gallon per minute capacity in the aquifer. So that's pretty significant. There'll be discussion regarding that throughout this conversation. The good news is 200 or up to 400 gallons a minute, we certainly have capacity to serve the amount of homes we're proposing. Our wells themselves are proposed to use 85 gallons per minute each. Our wells are located approximately 1,400 feet apart from each other. So what we did is we took a look at comparison of our proposed wells to other wells in the area. So this is our project. There's 118 private wells within a half mile of us. There are 119 private wells within a half mile of Horseshoe Bay's main irrigation well. So the irrigation well at Horseshoe Bay, which is on the same escarpment, pumps a recorded 968 gallons per minute, has much closer wells than ours, has the same number of wells within half a mile, and runs for 968 gallons a minute to fill their irrigation ponds. And there's no history that I know of wells going dry in that area. So again, we'll be pumping 85 gallons a minute per well. They pump 968 gallons per minute per well. Their nearest home is approximately 150 feet from their well. Our closest neighbor will be approximately 360 feet from our well. So we're confident that based on the aquifer information available, the history in the area, that the well capacity and drawdown in the neighborhood is a non-issue. I obtained a letter from Euclid Well Drilling basically saying that they feel that 100 gallon per minute will be available in this area, and that it should not have any negative impact on the neighbors' wells. Cindy Euclid followed up. I had asked her to look into other wells in the area, and she did come back, and that's where we got the 968 gallons per minute at Horseshoe Bay. Idlewild is 300 gallons per minute, Orchard's 275. So there's some examples in the county that certainly pump quite a bit more than us. In fact, our combined pumping total for our project, Horseshoe Bay would pump almost 6 times more than what we're proposing. One other aspect that has to do with the aquifer is, are we providing a zone of contamination that would contaminate downstream wells? So this map is right off the county GIS map. It shows the groundwater aquifers, and my red arrow indicates the direction of flow based on this line being 10 feet lower than this line, and it shows the direction of flow of the water. Again, our wells will be cased. We have no intention of doing any pollution, but the water is flowing away from the neighbor's and toward the Bay of Green Bay, if anything, in our project. Did I miss one there? Solid waste management, I'll run through this real quick. We're basically mimicking what was done at North Haven. They have a utility building that has the dumpsters in it. It keeps critters out of the dumpsters, keeps the smell down by keeping it cooler, keeps it out of the direct sunlight. I'll now turn it over to Mike. He's going to talk through the next pertinent item.
I'm going to spend a little bit of time, excuse me, talking about dust, noise, and odor. I'm going to focus most of my time during the construction phase of the project. Again, it's not a quarry. It will not become a quarry when we do our work there. There's no need to be any permits needed to become a quarry. The aggregates that'll be produced will actually be a byproduct of the work that we're doing. No products will leave the site. No products will be sold to outside people. So there will not be a need to acquire any type of permit, and there will be no reclamation plan required. What I want to do is spend a couple of minutes putting together how we are going to be doing the construction during the construction portion of the project. It's going to take a couple of minutes here to read this, to talk about the dust and the noise. Approximately timeline for the major construction, the blasting should take about 50 working days, crushing about 40 working days, utility installation 50 days, mass site grading 75 days. The hours and days of operation typically be from five days a week, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Crushing and screening plant typically includes a crusher, screening, conveyors. The crushing and screening plants utilized will be portable, and loaders will be used to service the crusher. Dump trucks, unloaders will transport material on site. Estimated volume of materials to be crushed approximately 100,000 cubic yards. The water requirements for operation. Water will also be used for dust suppression for aggregate processing, such as the crushing and screening. Water will also be used for dust suppression on internal roads. Safe and reasonable speed limits will be enforced for loaders and trucks to provide safe working conditions and reduce fugitive emissions. Fueling operations. No diesel fuel, engine oils, grease, hydraulic fluids will be stored on site. Lubrication, fueling, and repair practices used to maintain the equipment are designed to eliminate petroleum products from ground contact. Proper storage, handling, and use of petroleum products, as well as inspection and response procedures will be followed. Dust control measures. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Bureau of Air Management regulates crushing and screening operations at the site. Now again, it's the same thing that will be followed. If it was a quarry, same rules and regulations. The processing equipment is in compliance with the opacity requirements of the new source performance standards and will be permitted under the aggregate processing general permit, third-party company performing the crushing and screening. The general permit provides flexibility for using different processing configurations and various pieces of equipment depending on the type of product being produced. It outlines production requirements including record keeping, employee training, malfunctions prevention and abatement, fugitive dust control measures that must be maintained for compliance. Plant foreman will document the compliance activities associated with these requirements on a daily basis. Records of daily date production information will be available for inspection at the site. Wet suppression is used to supplement moisture for control fugitive emissions. Water for dust suppression at this operation will be obtained via truck or from an on-site source if wells are available. Erosion control plan measures during construction. Erosion control practice for the crushing and screening as well as site construction will be addressed in the stormwater pollution prevention plan prepared by Baldwin, implemented as part of the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources NR 216 stormwater group permit. Best management practice for pollution prevention will be used. Erosion control mats, fences, screens, blankets, bale checks, dikes, and other erosion control devices will be used as needed to minimize soil loss during disturbance activities. Noise control measures. Visual and noise screening will be maintained around much of the perimeter of the crushing and screening for duration of the site operations. Berms constructed of blasted rock will be constructed to reduce noise levels and produced at the site, as well as screening operations from view as much as possible. The berm height may vary somewhat in different areas of the crushing screening area depending on the need to effectively screen the operations. Blasting will be required on the site. A third-party blasting report will be provided prior to any blasting taking place. The report will determine blasting means and methods to follow to meet state-regulated blasting requirements. A licensed third-party contractor will complete all blasting activities. The blasting events will be monitored using an array of seismographs that will be placed in locations to best measure the vibrations in representative directions and distances from each blasting location. Upon request from adjacent property owners within 1/2 mile of property boundary, a pre-blast survey will be completed. Prior to commencement of any blasting activities, letters will be mailed to all qualifying property owners within 1/2 mile of the property boundary. The pre-blast survey will include pictures, videos, and other documentations. A copy of the pre-blast survey will be sent to the property owner and will be kept confidential between the homeowner, blasting company, and developer. MSHA will regulate the safety and health considerations of the site operation. The site is subject to inspection by MSHA and must meet the noise and dust exposure limits established for personnel employed in such site activities. Respirable dust exposure is minimized by the site by using wet suppression for processing aggregate materials and controlling fugitive emissions from peripheral activities including trucking. Shrouds, tarps, shields are used to supplement wet suppression and control wind effects on process aggregates. Third-party contractors will be committed to maintaining acceptable dust limits within MSHA standards and providing health, dust-free environment for employees and neighboring property owners. A safe and reasonable speed limit is enforced at the facility for loaders and trucks to provide safe working condition and reduce fugitive emissions. All employees of third-party construction companies contracted to perform work at the site will be certified by MSHA and any other required governing bodies where specified licensing or training is required. Private water wells. Upon request from adjacent owners within 1/4 mile of the property boundary, tap water tests for on-site well will be completed. Tap water tests utilized for baseline values will be kept confidential between the well owner and the developer. Water sample will be analyzed for the following parameters by Wisconsin certified well tester: bacteria, nitrate, chloride, and total dissolved solids. Insurance coverage. All third-party companies providing work on the property will carry all required state-mandated insurance coverages as well as a $5 million umbrella. What I'd like to show now is talk a little bit about the noise issue. The crushing operation will be set right where the pond is, and measuring distances from the pond to the nearest house is over 500 feet. Next slide. What I've done is I've looked at this is not the exact type of crusher that would be used. What I wanted to look at was a noise level that a crushing machine would produce at a 3-foot distance as well as a 200-foot distance from the machine itself. As you can see on the left picture, decibel noise ratings are around 100, and if you get 200 feet away, they drop down into the 60 decibel range. There is a way to measure the continuation of noise as it moves away from the source. Looking at this equation, if you're 100, the decibel reading would be 100. If you're 1 foot away, or calculating 400 feet away rather, the decibel reading drops down to 47. So there's about a half or 50% drop in the decibel readings when you get 400 feet away. So again, if the reading is somewhere in that 100 decibel range near the top, by the time the noise does travel to the nearest home, it's going to be down in that 40 range, which is more business, office, household, refrigerator. It's actually lower than normal conversation. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about, during the construction of the homes, looking again at 400 feet away from any homes. The area in the pink there, the lighter color, that is within 400 feet. So you're going to have noise in that area. Again, home building noise is going to be a lot less than the actual aggregate production. But I did want to also just show you that about 67% of the property as it's developed is more than 400 feet away. So again, those noises that are going to be made are going to be far away from any existing homes, so those noises should be negligible as far as disturbing the neighbors. This slide I just wanted to put in, it shows the way the dust would be controlled on the crushing operation. Again, that's water. It's distributed over the conveyor, or on the conveyor belts, or where the aggregates are changing direction or dropping down to conveyors. And again, this would all be monitored by DNR regulations. Actually, the newer crushers now, they actually have a stamp on them showing that they are approved by the DNR, showing that they are meeting any requirements for controlling dust. I just want to touch on odor a little bit. I don't have any slides for that, but in general discussions, the two major concerns of odor would be campfire odor and then the holding tank itself, the pumping out. And I know Pete touched on it a little bit, but the campfire odor, we are going to only allow gas fireplaces. There wouldn't be any wood burning fireplaces or outdoor fireplaces. So again, yeah, there'll be one wood fireplace outdoor, but near the clubhouse. And the other issue that we've discussed would be the holding tank pumping. Pete touched on it, but again, we're going to have a push pump in the tank that's going to speed up the time it takes to pump the tank. There's a vacuum air return that would be bringing the vapor back into the tank, so keeping that odor go right back into the tank. It wouldn't be exposed to the open air. And the other thing would be carbon filters or a misting air freshener system if that would be required to control odor, but we don't think that would be required.
How's our time looking? 26 minutes left? Okay, I'm going to make this very fast. So this is the existing crosswalk between the parking lot east of Bayshore Drive and Penny Park. It's well marked. That would be a primary pedestrian crossing if residents of our community would work their way down to go to the park. I think this is in your packet, but we did a safety analysis regarding pulling in and pulling out of our project. The main entrance to our project is on the south end here. We also have the entrance for the holding tank truck, and we have an emergency exit just for fire truck vehicles near the north end. So what I did is I ran a stopping sight distance to provide an analysis if it's safe, where those locations are based on how far you can see. And bottom line is that there is good visibility and it is safe. In fact, the south main entrance has visibility and stopping sight distance equal to 65 miles per hour in both directions approaching that intersection. So it would be 30 miles per hour faster than the posted speed limit. We're also proposing to do a right turn lane into and out of our main entrance. So these are just some of the views from our entrance points. And we will not, because we have a central entrance that everybody will use, we will not end up with equipment parked on Bayshore Drive. As far as the steepness, there's talk of our roadway access. Our steepest point of our road going up into our development will be 5.5%. I compared that to the neighborhood. Bayshore Heights, 7.5%, Bluff Drive, 8.75%, Bluff Court, over 10, and Dunn Road around 10. So our slope will be about half of those steeper ones. So 5.5%, hard to picture in your mind, but it's basically raising 1 feet in 18 feet. So if you assume that table's 18 feet long, if you lifted that end up a foot, that would be the slope of our entrance road. Traffic flow. One request by the opponents is to not send everybody up Bayshore Drive. So we would gladly, on our website, on the developer's website, is to propose that people accessing the site use this alternate route to limit large vehicles on Bayshore Drive. As far as emergency services, we do have signed off approval by the fire chief, Mr. Detman. We analyzed radiuses within our subdivision, that they're adequate for not only our motor coaches, but also fire trucks. There's an emergency access here. And we also are installing a dry hydrant into our storm pond, which would be placed deep enough to allow year-round access to water for fire suppression as needed by the fire department. There's just a cross-section of the dry hydrant. Stormwater management, I'll go through this as quickly as I can. Our overall project, like I described, we have up close to 4 acres of total ponds designed into this thing. They will be, stormwater will be routed to those ponds. What we did in this case is we used curb and gutter that I spoke of earlier. And the benefit of doing that is you don't have to rely on ditches with the underlying bedrock to get the water there. A curb and gutter system, we can direct conduit what we classify in the stormwater industry as dirty water, because it will be, the roads and the driveways will be directly drained right to the pond without risk of infiltrating into the underlying bedrock. So we feel that that accomplishes 2 things. First of all, it gets all the dirty water to the pond, and second of all, it keeps our pond full. The other aspects of the stormwater pond are, we need to do 80% suspended solids reduction to meet DNR code. We do a model that shows that will be accomplished. And we also need to do a peak flow reduction. And that is accomplished by allowing these ponds to fill up during storms and slowly meter out through a small orifice. And for example, you'll have a permanent wet pool in the pond, and when it rains, this top area fills up and it slowly drains out of the orifice. Quickly go through the pond details. Again, you know, our project is being held to a higher standard than other places in the community that have been developed. You can see all the impervious surfaces highlighted with no stormwater management in the area and uphill of our project. One important note to comment on the stormwater, there will be a 60 mil liner put in our pond. This in my hand is a 40 mil liner. I didn't have a 60, so it'd be 50%, again, as thick as that. If you want to take a look at that, the 60 mil liner in our climate is predicted to last over 400 years, and it is actually used in wastewater applications. So we're basically putting a sewage lagoon liner in a cleaner water storm pond. One other part of the stormwater management is, when it's all said and done, we'll have about 18 inches of filter material over the surface of the existing mine, which does not exist today. So that'll provide a filtering of any potential pollutants. I've done quite a few reclamation plans, and typically in a reclamation plan we do 4 inches of topsoil over the top of it. In this case, we'll have 18 inches. It certainly meets the expectations of what would be expected of a reclamation plan. I think I missed some of the traffic. Yeah, I did. I'm going to jump to one of the things was traffic. I didn't have slides for that, but I'll just run through. We had contracted with Robert E. Lee and Associates. They did a traffic study in October of 19. The traffic study indicated that based on a projected total vehicles per day on Bayshore Drive of 2,350 in the year 2025, the addition of what they estimated at about 330 trips per day would put us right around 2,680 vehicles per day, and the capacity of Bayshore Drive is 12,000. So we're at less than, what would that be, a quarter of the capacity of the highway. There are some questions regarding that report at the town level, so Robert E. Lee revisited it on January 17th of this year, and they added some more inflation values and put the additional traffic up to a total of about 3,000 vehicles per day versus the 12,000 vehicles per day on County Highway B. So then one of the next things to talk through is the neighborhood building comparison, I'll turn it over to Mike. He'll talk a little bit about the architecture.
I'll go real quick here. Item 12 is visual harmony with existing buildings in the neighborhood, and the answer to that is yes. Homes will have a footprint not to exceed 1,200 square feet. Houses largest will be approximately 2,500 square feet. They're single-family owner-occupied. They'll be single-story, two-story, and three-story homes. Homes will be constructed of similar materials as the neighbors. Bottom line, we are proposing a residential-based development for seasonal residential use, which is exactly in harmony with the neighborhood. Again, this is somewhat of a subjective type discussion, so we don't want to go too much more in detail on
it. Next item would be the excessive light discussion. We have no street lights planned for this. The only lighting would be on the buildings and motor coaches themselves. Would certainly meet dark sky compliance and have all downward lighting. Natural character, again, right now it is a vacant quarry floor. There's not a whole lot of natural growth. The areas that do have natural growth are areas where stockpiles or material has been placed or is remaining there from the mining. We plan to make it look more like the picture on the right, where it is landscaped with, again, the 18 inches of filter media and plant growth. One important item is that our site does not show up on the Door County green print goal. As you can see, it is white in our area, likely because it was an unreclaimed mine. Financial assurance. So financial assurance, the reason financial assurance is typically asked of a project in cities I've worked in is if the utilities are going to be turned over to a municipality, they want protection if you back out halfway through that they can pay somebody else to finish the utilities or the road that's being turned over to them. In this case, we have all private utilities, all private roads. We have no intention of the town or county ever being on the hook to maintain or take over our utilities. Therefore, we do not need a financial assurance. Potential conditions, we'll revisit this again at the rebuttal, but obviously the usuals we've done before are permits from all aspects. Public health, safety, and general welfare.
Yeah, item 17, the impact of proposed project on public health, public safety, and the general welfare of the county. Again, there's a fine line between subjective and objective definitions. Public health is the science and art of preventing disease and promoting health through organized efforts and informed choices of society. So therefore, that really is laws and rules. It's fairly objective, except if you're making a blanket statement that you're going to affect somebody's public health with not having a specific description of what you're talking about. Public safety, again, definition of that is state of being reasonably free from risk, damage, and injury. We've had conversation with existing property owner. Trespassing is taking place on the property. Not only is it illegal, inherent risk of severe injury given the topography of the quarry. We feel that this will be greatly reduced once it's a private managed community. Also, fire protection outside the development will be improved with the availability of dry hydrant installed within the development. As far as public welfare, we looked at it from again, the definition of public welfare, act of contributing to economic sustainability, creating community, and allowing communities to function more effectively. And we'll be talking about economic impact at a little bit later time, but it's a substantial impact to the local community. We'll be touching on that later. And I just did want to show you that, again, because of the subjectiveness of some of the way that public health, safety, and character being looked at from Act 67, that definitely have to be the scientific and the measurable discussion and not just the subjective discussions.
How's our time, Mariah? 14 minutes? All right, I won't get through this, but I'm gonna try my best to get close, and then we'll pick this up in the rebuttal stage as needed. I took the opposition's report that was filed that I believe you all have in your packets, and I just went through and I highlighted and tabbed in my book here things that can be argued, I believe are incorrect. I'm glad we have a time limit because this is very boring for me to go through with you for hours. So I'm just going to run through them as fast as I can. Not everything's going to be a great explanation. When it gets to the questions, please feel free to ask me more about each one of these. Page 8, they talk about rock holes. It clearly has a letter from the county saying they've inspected it for sinkholes and rock holes, and there are none. They talk about our proposal will be removing significant amount of vegetation. My opinion is that it's a vacant quarry floor. It's limited. There's a comment about Pond C and the holding tank being in the ordinary high water mark. I believe that's misstated. It's certainly not proposed in the lake.
Hold on, there, time?
13 and a half.
No, I've got a question, that's why I'm calling time out here. They are rebutting what might be presented by the opposition. Is that allowable?
Yeah, that's,
Even though it hasn't been presented yet?
it's all in the packet.
It's in their packet, so it's okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No problem. Good question. Yeah, keep it paused. Page 14, all elevated density developments within 2.5 miles like Bayshore Inn and Westwood Shores are non-conforming. They actually do conform to the current zoning on those parcels. Page 16, applicants completely ignore the 2019 Sevastopol 20-year comp plan. We can go into the reasons for that, but that was recorded after our project was in the works. Page 18 talks about the potential of a tank floating. We will have a ballast calculation with the state. Page 18 also talks about the overall drainage slope of 1/8 inch per foot is code for sewer pipe. That is incorrect. It's 0.4% for 8-inch pipe. Page 20, karst topography of Door County and the impact of groundwater contamination for miles around of the site is completely ignored. It certainly isn't ignored. We have well casing of 170 feet grouted. We have 18 inches of filter material. We have curb and gutter leading directly to the pond of the dirty water. We have lined ponds with wastewater strength liners. Page 21, community water system raises significant concern about completeness of this information. Again, I explained the DNR asked for 2 different types of wells. We've got them what they want. That certainly doesn't say we're ignoring any health safety. The water level of Green Bay, they have labeled on the same page saying it's that the groundwater level is 10 feet below the quarry surface. Based on the aquifer contours, it's 56 feet, so that's misstated. They talk about noise having pain-inducing levels at the neighbors. I think that's a stretch. Open fractures on the quarry floor can be opened further by blasting, creating easy communication between surface water and groundwater. Again, I walked the site many times. I doubt if there's a place on that site that I missed it, or there isn't anything you could drop a pencil down. Page 28, concern for safety pedestrian walking up and down the hill has been ignored. And Bayshore Drive, I showed the crosswalk, it is addressed, and our slope of our road is very gradual. Safety of the residents need to be foremost. Class A owners are mature age. Walking down the slope blacktop drives will exit and return to the resort. On foot is unsafe. We have over a mile of interior roads people will walk on up by us. If they would choose to go down, I believe this slope is reasonable. The calls for putting stop signs on Bayshore Drive at the crosswalk in both directions. I think that'd be very dangerous on a county highway. They argue the total trips per hour in our traffic study. They say it should be doubled because we have different people in the motor coach as the home. Those are the same people. It says the DNR has realized this is a very sensitive karst topography requiring additional geological evaluation. This and other agencies now see that this may be the largest and most complex stormwater application in Door County history, certainly on such an exposed site. Certainly the DNR's only reason they required geology for the first time in my history of doing this is because they were getting many phone calls from the opposition, and they are now requesting that. We're happy to do that. Certainly, Horseshoe Bay Farms golf course would be more complex than this based on the shallow soils, the fertilizers, the high capacity well, all that is, I would say, more complex than what we're dealing with. 10 minutes. I may get through this. This amount of blasting and trenching and grinding creates a new metallic mine. No, that's been covered. The entire development is of a scale and density completely out of harmony. According to the zoning that it's currently in, we certainly meet the scale and density prescribed by zoning. Opposition says deny the application for failing to show that the development contributes to visual harmony. Again, I was in Petoskey. We're not creating something that would be a negative. Homeowners Association must be prepared to pay for utilities and upgrades. Continued costs revert to the town and county. The town and county would not be on the hook for anything. We're privately funded. It says if this is a failure and the site is half built, it's a problem. Again, the site at that point, much of the reclamation is being done day one before any sales. So the next owner would inherit or purchase a property that would have safe access as well as being basically reclaimed. These agreements in the bylaws must be monitored and approved by the town and county. I'm not sure if the county wants to get in the business of reviewing or enforcing homeowner association covenants. It says 80 residential properties within a quarter mile of the quarry. Hundreds live downstream in the path of potential groundwater. Again, based on county aquifers, I would argue that the aquifer is going in the opposite direction. They encourage the landowner to explore all available options for development of her land. Again, it was for sale forever. And from a tax standpoint, I would prefer it not go into a tax exempt use. They asked for a surety bond. Again, we went over that, why that would not apply to a private development. They talk about SF20 lots and SC20 SE lots with minimum tree cover, that this would be a problem. I'd say it certainly does compare to the SE and SF20 based on our residential use. How much time, Mariah? They call Bayshore Drive a local residential street. It's a major rural collector. It's actually a county highway. They suggest that my stormwater plan need to handle a 200-year storm instead of what we did. Certainly that's not, the DNR requires a 2-year to 2-year reduction, not a 200. There's no homes downstream of our stormwater, so certainly nobody would get flooded out based on our project, even if there was no stormwater pond. It says my stormwater system uses streets and curbs and gutters as the primary collection system. This ensures the most rapid form of stormwater movement and washes out any road pollutants into the detention basin with no filtration. This is the worst way to move stormwater. Completely disagree. We're taking it to a safe spot with a wastewater liner. We want it to get there rather than soak into the underlying bedrock. Talks about local competition, and these people should just go to the existing campgrounds in the area. Certainly they're not the same beast. This is a upscale Class A motor coach facility. They talk about following conservation subdivision rules with 50% of green space set aside. I've done a lot of conservation subdivisions. Typically it's more of the 40%, and we do have only 30% impervious in our sites, so we do have 69% green space when it's all said and done. Talks about invasive species. We will be landscaping and planting native plantings throughout. Right now there are invasives. In fact, I did get poison ivy from being up there. I talk about my holding tank floating. There's calculations that'll be done. They talk a lot about the zone of depression around a well. Again, we're looking at 85 gallons a minute. Horseshoe Bay is over 900. They have closer homes. Our nearest home is 360. The aquifer says it's between 200 and 400 gallon minute capacity. Any cone of depression they have shown in their display certainly doesn't have science behind how they came up with that line. It just shows that all the neighbors' wells will go dry. One exhibit shows 4 sinkholes on our site. Again, that contradicts what the county had done as far as their inspection. They outline zones of influence for city wells. We're not in that zone. But again, the well at Sunset Park nearest Bayshore Drive has 1,710 gallon per minute capacity with only 148 feet of casing, and it's in service with no contamination. Again, they're pumping 1,700. Nobody along the south end of Bayshore Drive has well issues. There's multiple photos of sinkholes and caves that are not on our project. They talk about groundwater contamination. I think I've covered that with the filtering. They talk about our 300 people at our site is more than the population of Egg Harbor. Similar to Egg Harbor, ours is actually our summer count. They use Egg Harbor's winter count. So in Egg Harbor, you'd have 2,600 in summer or more. So approximately 10 times larger than ours. Our winter population will probably be likely to be more like 2. MSHA guidelines, obviously we use all our rock and blasting equipment and we'll use that. Do I have a minute? 3? I think I hit the high points here where they talk about traffic noise from the motor coaches running. Again, most of these people park them there and leave them there for their duration, and they have a smaller car they go to town with. They're not going to be running their motor coaches. There's a diagram of a bunch of water coming over the edge of the cliff. Right now, there's 12 acres running to that spot, and we're going to have only 4.5 acres running to that spot once we regrade our site and get it directed to the pond. They talk about climate change and how ours will be bad for that. We are actually vegetating a flat black stone area and providing some green space. One thing I didn't mention yet is we do have provisions in the stormwater plan. If we find a rock hole or a crevice, there's ways to patch that. We have 3 different criteria based on how wide that is, and that's what we've used in the past for the Door County Soil and Water. I'll hold the rest if we have to get back to this. I guess I'll be back at the rebuttal, but keep in mind that we certainly did our homework. We have a complete application. We feel we meet every one of the 17 items that would allow this to be approved. Zoning, it certainly meets the zoning. It's already zoned. We're not asking for rezoning. Yes, the use is a little different than the neighborhood. We feel it's going to be a good addition. I know that the opposition is going to argue that it is not. So I look forward to rebuttal, and if you want to hit me with questions now, that'd be great too. Thanks.
5 minutes? We're going to take a 5-minute break. Then we'll grill you.